Dear students, Namaskar. I hope that you all must be in sound health and must be continuing your studies regularly. Children, today we are going to discuss Chapter 7 of Class 10 Science, Control and Coordination. Before starting with the chapter, let us recall what you have already studied in your previous classes. What happens when we accidentally touch a hot object? What do you do when you touch hot pan or saucepan in the kitchen? Why can't we hold ice for a very long time in our hands? Now let us see what we are going to learn today. Animal nervous system, coordination in plants, hormones in animals. Neha Didi, come quickly. See, these plants have grown in the soil where we threw those mango seeds. Yes, Anmol, it is indeed very beautiful. But you should speak softly. I don't like it when you speak so loudly. Didi, the sun is shining very brightly today and I am unable to open my eyes in this bright light. I don't know why this happens. Come on, Didi. Mama has brought us milk. Let's have it. Ouch, Mama. The milk is too hot. See, Didi, now you are shouting so loudly when you touch the hot glass. You just keep quiet. This growth of plants and human beings, feeling cold or hot, closing of eyes in bright sunlight are some of the movements which take place around us. But how do these movements occur? Didi, you must ask your teacher about these movements tomorrow. Next day, Neha asked her teacher about all these movements. Children, these movements are, in fact, the result of growth as in plants. A seed germinates and grows, and we can see that the seedling moves over the course of a few days. It pushes soil aside and comes out. Ma'am, when we play on a swing, so does that movement also occur because of growth? No, beta. Swing shows movement, but this is not because of growth. This movement occurs because of changes around us. Some movements, as in many animals and some plants, are not connected with growth. A cat running, children playing on swings, buffaloes chewing cud. These are not movements caused by growth. Ma'am, why do our eyes close when bright light is focused on them? When bright light is focused on our eyes or when we touch a hot object, we detect the change and respond to it with movement in order to protect ourselves. When we want to talk to our friends in class, we whisper rather than shouting loudly. Clearly, the movement to be made depends on the event that is triggering it. Therefore, such controlled movement must be connected to the recognition of various events in the environment. Specialized tissues are used to provide these control and coordination activities. Animal nervous system. In animals, such control and coordination are provided by nervous and muscular tissue. Touching a hot object is an urgent and dangerous situation for us. We need to detect it and respond to it. How do we detect that we are touching a hot object? All information from our environment is detected by the specialized tips of some nerve cells. These receptors are usually located in our sense organs such as the inner ear, the nose, the tongue, and so on. Let us first know about the structure of a nerve cell or a neuron. Neuron has three main parts: dendrite, cell body or cyton and axon. Cyton has a nucleus and at the end of the neuron there is nerve ending. The information acquired at the end of the dendritic tip of a nerve cell sets off a chemical reaction that creates an electrical impulse. This impulse travels from the dendrite to the cell body and then along the axon to its end. At the end of the axon, the electrical impulse sets off the release of some chemicals. These chemicals cross the gap or synapse and start a similar electrical impulse in a dendrite of the next neuron. A similar synapse finally allows delivery of such impulses from neurons to other cells such as muscle cells or glands. Nervous tissue is made up of an organized network of nerve cells or neurons and is specialized for conducting information via electrical impulses from one part of the body to another. Let us now perform an activity. Gopal put some sugar in his mouth and tasted it. Now Mohan blocked his nose by pressing it between his thumb and index finger and put some sugar in his mouth. What do you think? Who will be able to identify the taste of sugar properly? Absolutely right. Gopal was able to taste the sugar properly, whereas Mohan was not able to taste properly because we are able to detect the taste properly only when tongue tastes the food and nose detects its smell. If any of this does not occur, we may not be able to detect the taste completely. This is the reason why we are not able to detect the taste of food properly when we have a cold. Children, I have been talking about reflex action. But what happens in reflex actions? Let us know about it. Reflex is a word we use very commonly when we talk about sudden action in response to something in the environment. Take one of our examples. Touching a flame is an urgent and dangerous situation for us, or in fact for any animal. How would we respond to this? When our hand touches a hot object, we immediately remove our hand without even thinking. If brain has to control these movements, it will take some time for the brain to receive message and give response, and by that time our hand may get burnt. In such an emergency situation, spinal cord sends signals to the muscles for movement. The nerves that detect heat are to be connected to the nerves that move muscles in a simpler way. The process of detecting the signal or the input and responding to it by an output action is completed quickly. Such a connection is commonly called a reflex arc. In a reflex arc, the message from the receptors in the skin moves to the sensory neuron. From the sensory neuron, the message is carried to the spinal cord, which is connected with the relay neuron, and the message through relay neuron is taken to the motor neuron, and motor neuron carries that message to the effectors in the muscle, and in turn muscle causes the movement. Brain does not play an important role in reflex arc. However, a set of information travels to brain and thinking process comes only after the reflex action. Human brain. Humans are the organisms which have tremendous thinking capacity. But the question is, which part of our body plays an important role in thinking, or we can say which organ is responsible for thinking. We also think about our actions. Writing, talking, moving a chair, clapping at the end of a program are examples of voluntary actions, which are based on deciding what to do next. The complex organ with multiple neural connections which is responsible for thinking is the brain. So, the brain has to send messages to the muscles. To understand control and coordination mechanisms properly, let us know about the nervous system in detail. Nervous system is divided into two parts: central nervous system, which include brain and spinal cord, and peripheral nervous system, which includes cranial nerves and spinal nerves. The communication between the central nervous system and the other parts of the body is facilitated by the peripheral nervous system, consisting of cranial nerves arising from the brain and spinal nerves arising from the spinal cord. The brain thus allows us to think and take actions based on that thinking. Brain is the main part of central nervous system and is responsible for integrating different inputs and outputs. The information is sent to different muscles for action. The brain has three such major parts or regions, namely the forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. The forebrain is the main thinking part of the brain. It has regions which receive sensory impulses from various receptors. Separate areas of the forebrain are specialized for hearing, smell, sight and so on. Reading, memory and thinking are also controlled by this part. Listening and interpreting the information also takes place here. However, certain sensations are distinct from seeing or hearing. For example, how do we know that we have eaten enough? The sensation of feeling full is because of a center associated with hunger, which is in a separate part of the forebrain. Actions like singing, running, etc. are also controlled here. So, we can say all voluntary actions are in the control of forebrain. Midbrain. It connects forebrain and hindbrain. Hindbrain, the cerebellum part of hindbrain, controls balancing of the body and maintaining the posture. For example, imagine a child who does not know how to hold a pencil, is able to hold the pencil and balances it with its fingers, and this is done by the cerebellum part of the hindbrain. Many of the involuntary actions are controlled by medulla in hindbrain. Actions including blood pressure, salivation and vomiting are controlled by the medulla in the hindbrain. How are these tissues protected? A delicate organ like the brain, which is so important for a variety of activities, needs to be carefully protected. For this, the body is designed so that the brain sits inside a bony box. Inside the box, the brain is contained in a fluid-filled balloon which provides further shock absorption. The vertebral column or backbone protects the spinal cord. Children, how does the nervous tissue cause action? So far, we have been talking about nervous tissue and how it collects information, sends it around the body, processes information, makes decisions based on information, and conveys decisions to muscles for action. In other words, when the action or movement is to be performed, muscle tissue will do the final job. How do animal muscles move? The simplest notion of movement at the cellular level is that muscle cells will move by changing their shape so that they shorten. Chemistry of cellular components. Muscle cells have special proteins that change both their shape and their arrangement in the cell in response to nervous electrical impulses. When this happens, new arrangements of these proteins give the muscle cells a shorter form. Coordination in plants. Mama, see, when I touched the leaves of this plant, they folded in. How does this happen? I am surprised to see that this plant could actually feel my touch. Children, you might also have seen this mimosa plant and tried to touch its leaves. Now the question arises that animals have a nervous system for controlling and coordinating the activities of the body. But plants have neither a nervous system nor muscles. So how do they respond to stimuli? When a seed germinates, the root goes down and stem comes up into the air. What happens? Firstly, the leaves of the sensitive plant move quickly to respond to touch. On the other hand, the directional movement of a seedling is caused by growth. So plants show two different types of movement, one dependent on growth and the other independent of growth. Immediate response to stimulus. Let us think about the first kind of movement, such as that of the sensitive plant. Since no growth is involved, the plant must actually move its leaves in response to touch. But there is no nervous tissue nor any muscle tissue. So how does the plant detect the touch and how do the leaves move in response? If we think about where exactly the plant is touched and what part of the plant actually moves, it is apparent that movement happens at a point different from the point of touch. So information that a touch has occurred must be communicated. Plants also use electrical chemical means to convey this information from cell to cell. But unlike in animals, there is no specialized tissue in plants for the conduction of information. Finally, again as in animals, some cells must change shape in order for movement to happen. Instead of the specialized proteins found in animal muscle cells, plant cells change shape by changing the amount of water in them, resulting in swelling or shrinking and therefore in changing shapes. So this was the movement due to response to stimulus, which is not related with growth of the plant. Another example of such movement is opening of flowers during daytime and closing of flowers during night, or movement of leaves due to wind. These kind of responses show quick movements. Now, second type of movement is movement due to growth. When plants grow, so there are movements in the plant due to this growth. Some plants, like the pea plant, climb up other plants or fences by means of tendrils. These tendrils are sensitive to touch. When they come in contact with any support, the part of the tendril in contact with the object does not grow as rapidly as the part of the tendril away from the object. This causes the tendril to circle around the object and thus cling to it. Environmental triggers such as light or gravity will change the directions that plant parts grow in. These directional or tropic movements can be either towards the stimulus or away from it. So, in two different kinds of phototropic movement, shoots respond by bending towards light while roots respond by bending away from it. We can prove this with the help of an activity. Fill a conical flask with water. Cover the neck of the flask with a wire mesh. Keep 2 or 3 freshly germinated bean seeds on the wire mesh. Take a cardboard box which is open from one side. Keep the flask in the box in such a manner that the open side of the box faces light coming from a window. After 2 or 3 days, you will notice that the shoots bend towards light and roots away from light. Plants show tropism in response to other stimuli as well. The roots of a plant always grow downwards while the shoots usually grow upwards and away from the earth. This upward and downward growth of shoots and roots respectively in response to the pull of earth or gravity is obviously geotropism. If we keep a potted plant horizontally on the ground, we see that the stem of plant changes direction and grows upwards, and the root also changes direction and grows downwards. The upward movement of shoot is negative geotropism and the downward movement of root is positive geotropism. Hydrotropism. Next tropic movement is hydrotropism. In this, roots of plants, even in soil, always grow in the direction where there is source of water. Next movement is due to sensitivity to touch. Some plants, like the pea plant, climb up other plants or fences by means of tendrils. These tendrils are sensitive to touch. When they come in contact with any support, the part of the tendril in contact with the object does not grow as rapidly as the part of the tendril away from the object. This causes the tendril to circle around the object and thus cling to it. Next type of tropic movement is chemotropism, which takes place towards or away from chemicals. So, these were the tropic movements in plants. Let us now once again think about how information is communicated in the bodies of multicellular organisms. So, controlled movements can be either slow or fast. If fast responses to stimuli are to be made, information transfer must happen very quickly. For this, medium of transmission must be able to move rapidly. Electrical impulses are an excellent means for this. But there are limitations to the use of electrical impulses. Firstly, they will reach only those cells that are connected by nervous tissue, not each and every cell in the animal body. Secondly, once an electrical impulse is generated in a cell and transmitted, the cell will take some time to reset its mechanisms before it can generate and transmit a new impulse. In other words, cells cannot continually create and transmit electrical impulses. It is thus no wonder that most multicellular organisms use another means of communication between cells, namely chemical communication. If instead of generating an electrical impulse, stimulated cells release a chemical compound, this compound would diffuse all around the original cell. If other cells around have the means to detect this compound using special molecules on their surfaces, then they would be able to recognize information and even transmit it. These compounds or hormones used by multicellular organisms for control and coordination show a great deal of diversity as we would expect. They are synthesized at places away from where they act and simply diffuse to the area of action. Hormones in animals. Hormones are the chemicals which transmit information in animals and help in control and coordination. They are secreted in blood and carried to different parts of body. They affect our physical and mental efficiency and metabolism. If these hormones are present in proper amount in our body, then it leaves a good impact on our body. Whereas, if they are released in inappropriate quantities and our hormones are imbalanced, our body may not be able to work normally. Children, now let us talk about a few hormones released in our body. Our first hormone is adrenaline. Adrenaline is secreted directly into the blood and carried to different parts of the body. Adrenal glands are situated on kidneys and release some other hormones also. Adrenaline hormone prepares the body in an emergency situation. That means where we have to decide whether we will face the situation or run away, which means fight or flight. The target organs or the specific tissues on which it acts include the heart. As a result, the heart beats faster, resulting in supply of more oxygen to our muscles. The blood to the digestive system and skin is reduced due to contraction of muscles around small arteries in these organs. This diverts the blood to our skeletal muscles. Testosterone hormone. This hormone is released by testes and plays an important role in development of sexual organs in male. These hormones develop muscles and provides strength to muscles, strengthens the bones, increases the production of RBCs, and controls changes associated with puberty in males. Estrogen hormone. In females, estrogen control changes associated with puberty in females. Apart from this, it also helps in physical changes as development of breasts, growth of pubic hair, and shape of body. This hormone also controls menstruation. It also helps in development of uterus. If the egg is fertilized and zygote implants in the uterus, then stimulation of mammary glands for milk production is also controlled by this hormone. Next hormone is the thyroxine hormone released by thyroid gland. Thyroxine regulates carbohydrate, protein and fat metabolism in the body so as to provide the best balance for growth. Iodine is essential for the synthesis of thyroxine. In case iodine is deficient in our diet, there is a possibility that we might suffer from goiter. Iodized salt helps to supplement the iodine deficiency in our body. Some other symptoms of deficiency of thyroxine hormone are weakness, lethargy, dry skin, memory related issues. Insulin. This is a hormone which is produced by the pancreas and helps in regulating blood sugar levels. If it is not secreted in proper amounts, the sugar level in the blood rises, causing many harmful effects. If it is so important that hormones should be secreted in precise quantities, we need a mechanism through which this is done. The timing and amount of hormone released are regulated by feedback mechanisms. For example, if the sugar levels in the blood rise, they are detected by the cells of the pancreas, which respond by producing more insulin. As the blood sugar level falls, insulin secretion is reduced. Recapitulation. Nervous system is divided into two parts, central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system includes brain and spinal cord, and peripheral nervous system includes cranial nerves and spinal nerves. Control and coordination are the functions of the nervous system and hormones in our bodies. The nervous system uses electrical impulses to transmit messages. The gap between two neurons is called synapse. Reflex actions are controlled by spinal cord. Human brain is present inside skull in a liquid. Human brain has three parts: forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. Coordination in plants is carried out with the help of hormones. A feedback mechanism regulates the action of hormones. Children, now I will ask you a few questions and I hope that you might be knowing the answers. So my first question is, cytokinin is a dash hormone. So the right answer is plant hormone. My next question is, the gap between two neurons is called dash. And the right answer is synapse. My next question, backbone provides protection to dash. And the answer is spinal cord. My next question, dash deficiency leads to imbalance in the production of thyroxine hormone. And the right answer is iodine. My next question, dash is the main thinking organ of our body. And the right answer is brain. My next question is, what is the function of adrenaline hormone in our body? And the answer is, adrenaline hormone prepares the body in an emergency situation. That means when we have to decide whether we will face the situation or run away, which means fight or flight. My next question is, which activities are controlled by forebrain? And the answer is, the forebrain is the main thinking part of the brain. It has regions which receive sensory impulses from various receptors such as for hearing, smell, sight and so on. Reading, memory and thinking are also controlled by this part. My next question is, what happens in a reflex action? In a reflex action, the information is received by the receptors and is sent to the sensory neuron, which travels to the relay neuron in the spinal cord, and from the relay neuron it travels to the motor neuron and reaches the effectors in the muscle. My next question is, which plant hormone controls growth? And the right answer is auxin. With this, we complete our chapter. I hope you all must have listened to the chapter carefully and understood it well. Children, stay healthy, stay safe, keep learning and keep growing. Thank you.